COVID was, everything pre-COVID was addressed. So the 12 bold ideas were addressed by a multitude of different jurisdictions, municipal governments, Indigenous governments, provincial government to some extent, and federal government. And so what we thought was, if we did this during COVID, why can't we shift the focus and talk about poverty, homelessness, inequity as a global pandemic as well? And so if we take the lessons that we learned from COVID and say, you know, we'll take different policy and practice moving forward, what are those things and what are the big gaps that were really clear? So housing clearly is one of the biggest gaps, and Priscilla and the other folks here are going to talk specifically about what's going on in that sector. So I'm not going to take any of that information. I'm not going to take any time to talk about that. But we learned very quickly that there is not a good supply of the housing continuum for people in need, from when they face homelessness to when they might be securely housed, and everything in between. The other thing that we noticed was that there's a large substance use related issue in Saskatoon, and there are limited options for folks who have intensive substance use needs. And those supports and that substance use is often triggered by intense intergenerational trauma. And we're not talking about the intersection of poverty and racism in a brave enough way. And so if we're going to move that work forward, we have to connect the dots around systemic racism, bias, privilege, and affluence, and what does that look like? So we're going to shift our focus into that and talk very specifically about the intersection of poverty and racism. The third piece is public washrooms, which is a really unusual thing to sort of bubble to the surface, but 117 days-ish into the pandemic response, access to public washrooms became a really important piece across the board for a multitude of people, because it's probably no newsflash to any of you. Every single person, every human needs access to a public washroom, or he needs access to a washroom. And so we lived through a series of time when that access was extremely limited, if non-existent. And even as we emerged into a COVID reality, we realized that public washroom access was a problem. And so we're working on those pieces. The fourth piece is, my brain is hurting. Oh, income. And so we're taking a really good look at the relationship of income, because although giving people money is not the end all and be all to eliminating poverty, it plays a critical role. People need enough money to buy what they need it, and how they want to live. And so if you talk about the role of income assistance in this province and how dreadfully low it is, and the policies in place to make it inaccessible to folks, that system actually perpetuates and creates cycles of poverty, creates cycles of homelessness, further reinforces colonial racist practice, and creates circumstances for folks who can never claw their way out of it. And so we want to talk about the role of basic income, the role about providing folks with enough income and the supports then to manage that income. And you can hear my alarm, to be able to sort of set that work forward. And so I know that everyone else is going to talk about these things, particularly as it pertains to the housing continuum. But I think from an SPRP perspective, we're really quite interested in trying to figure out how all the systems are intricately connected. You can't make a change in one part of the system without paying attention to the way that it ripples out and impacts other. And at the root of all of this work is the long-standing systemic racism that is built in the foundation of Canada, or in the foundation of Saskatoon or Saskatchewan. And so if we start talking about it differently, disrupting and dismantling the colonial mindset that built those systems in the first place, and those systems purposely to exclude, to alienate, and to marginalize, and create systems together, particularly together and Indigenous led, then those systems can create space where equity and inclusion, actual inclusion, are at the root of, and at the very being of the system. So I'll leave you with that little tidbit.
Thank you very much, Colleen, for giving us that overview and for your ongoing work and commitment. We're going to move on now to hear some of the more specific responses that Colleen was referring to, beginning with the Saskatoon Housing Initiative Partnership, or SHIP as it's known of. We have our Executive Director, Priscilla Johnston, as well as Ariana, who will be joining here tonight for a presentation. So I pass the baton over to them to share a bit more about what SHIP does.
Thank you. I just want to bring to attention, I've actually joined in on my phone today. So I've got Ariana who will be helping me in regards to the presentation. I couldn't access my Zoom account effectively here on my laptop at home. So I just apologize for that little blurb there. Not very technically, I'm sorry, not very, not really an expert when it comes to computers and stuff. So I lack in some of those pieces. So, okay. So I just want to say thank you for inviting us today. I'll just give a little brief overview of what SHIP does, and then I will highlight some of the thought processes that we're thinking about and how we can collaborate and come together as a larger community to provide our supports for our current homeless population. So the Saskatoon Housing Initiatives Partnership is a multifaceted organization that plays an instrumental role in both affordable housing and solutions around homelessness in our community. We also work to provide consultation and research services and frontline support to groups developing affordable housing. At the same time, we raise awareness about the need for affordable housing and research innovative policy solutions. To address homelessness, we collaborate with multiple organizations across our city at all levels of government with one simple goal, and that's to end homelessness. So a lot of those parameters also outline with some of the conversation that Colleen has brought forth. So I apologize if I'm kind of repeating some of the same stuff that she may be repeating, but Ariana, if you could move on to the next slide. Can everyone see that okay? Okay. So we focused on basically what the need would be in the community currently and how we can assist our current homeless population and within the city. So we came from a needs assessment viewpoint and to help with our current capacity issues within the city of Saskatoon. So the area of need is capacity. So there's increase in precariously housed population as well as homeless population due to a variety of factors, which has led to an increase in encampments throughout the city. COVID has limited shelter space and availability due to social distancing requirements and outbreaks in community. Limited resources for community organization, gaps in services and limited weekend support services, and a lack of support service from hours of midnight to 8 a.m. Can you go to the next slide? Also, Saskatchewan winters can be harsh. There are several extreme weather events that occur, and exposure is a reality for our most vulnerable. Community organizations that provide emergency services and shelter are overwhelmed as a result of the increased demand for help. At the same time, more viable warm-up locations are needed. Next slide. So we've highlighted some of the cold weather strategy guiding principles that a majority of our community organizations are a part of. Each year we collaborate and try to work with each other to mitigate some of these barriers that some of our current vulnerable populations face. So the guiding principles of the cold weather strategy is that no one should sleep outside on a cold night. Individual dignity must be respected, even in emergency situations. Each person should have a space and safely social distance and should be provided appropriate PPE if required. Health and safety of staff and other residents is a priority, and admission to a shelter must consider both the health and safety of staff and residents. Everyone will work to ensure that individuals and families experiencing or at risk of homelessness are aware of safe, available sleeping options. The objective is to assist our most vulnerable population with a collaborative approach to ensure that everyone has a safe and secure place to stay during extreme weather. If you can go on the next slide. What does support look like? Increased warm-up capacity. So open up a temporary warm-up location for short periods of time during extreme weather events. Now, these are some of our proposals that we were thinking that with the diocese today, that these could be some, what some of those supports may look like if you were willing and capable of opening up a potential warm-up location during the winter months. So flexible opening times, approximately 2 to 4 hours, provide coffee and light snacks, limited space for people to warm up, space of maybe 10 to 15 individuals, socially distanced, supported by SHIP housing case managers and volunteers, emergency housing navigation, advocacy and support by SHIP staff, crisis intervention and conflict resolution. Volunteers will be supported and assisted by qualified SHIP staff, option for other community organizations to support as well. And then at the same time, ongoing evaluation of support services and fluidity of partnership to ensure safety and security with all partners involved. So our objective from SHIP's perspective is to assist and mitigate. So if this is a capacity or a venture that the diocese would like to engage in, we would like to offer as much support and guidance as we can to make sure that all risks and barriers are mitigated through, and that you're not left on your own devices and how to support the vulnerable population. We'd like to start slow so that you're comfortable and not put in a position that you be overwhelmed and that there's potential security risks. So we'd like to work with you in that regard. Any questions or comments? Sorry, did I go over my 8 minutes or 5 minutes?
No, not at all, Priscilla. You're right on. Yeah, if there is a question, we can certainly take a question now. If not, there'll be other opportunities during our small and large group discussions later on in the evening. But thank you very much, Priscilla and Ariana, for giving us a little bit of an outlook into what SHIP does and their operations, and being proactive in putting together a proposal that we can all take back and consider. So thank you. And it was wonderful meeting both of you as well recently. We're going to move forward now with our next presentation from Elizabeth Fry. So we have Kaylee LaFontaine is unable to be here with us tonight. She had a brief emergency coming up. She's the executive director, but we are blessed to have Patty Tate with us. So Patty volunteered to do a brief presentation on very, very short notice. So welcome, Patty, and thank you for being here with us tonight, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the presentations before me, which gave some indicators as to exactly what the solutions might be for the atrocious situation we have in respect to homelessness in this city. I'm going to frame my presentation a little differently and talk about the women that we serve and the struggles that they have in looking for any kind of housing, whether that's through agencies, through social services, or for that matter, through landlords. And the reality is Elizabeth Fry serves women who have come in conflict with the law, most of whom are single. Although they have children, they may not have custody of those children at the time that they are returning to the community. And as a result, as a single woman, the housing expectations are atrocious. There is absolutely nothing that we can offer, with the exception of the Lighthouse, and very few landlords that are willing to accept this most marginalized group of women. And Colleen alluded to racism and discrimination. Approximately 80 to 90% of the women who are housed at Pine Grove Institution, our provincial institution here, are Indigenous women and have come through significant traumas that have led them into a life of crime. And as a direct result, they often don't have any kind of they don't have any kind of experience working or living in the real world. Not to mention the fact that in many cases they don't feel entitled to have a decent life. They don't feel entitled to have a home. They're quite comfortable almost with the fact that they're homeless and that there's no one out there that's really supporting them. We do the best that we can. We offer a clothing depot for women. We offer toiletries and those type of things. We offer pen packs for the women who are incarcerated. But the reality is that homelessness reigns high on the list of the issues that we have to face on a daily basis. It's an issue that we don't have an answer for, and unfortunately, our Elizabeth Fry local does not have housing but trust me when I say it's on the top of the list of things that we are seeking. We're seeking housing. We're seeking partnerships to obtain housing that is going to be suitable and is going to be available for the women that we serve. I just saw a young lady last week who I've known for many years. She used to sleep in the alley behind our office on 3rd Avenue when we were there. And I saw her back in the institutions today or yesterday. And she has significant mental health issues. And those are some of the dilemmas that we have as to what resources we can plug people in with in our community. She's going to be getting out next month, and guess what? The likelihood of her finding housing is very slim. We'll do everything we can to hook her up with agencies and organizations that can support her. But the truth of the matter is there are so many individuals out there, particularly through COVID and through this last year and a half, who suffer from extreme mental health issues, who suffer from not just the homelessness, but hunger, and not just hunger and an inability to cope with the life that they've been thrown into as a direct result of, oftentimes through no fault of their own. I sound like I'm on a bandbox, and I am on a bandbox, and I'm on a bandbox to say that these women deserve the joy that we all experience every day. And they deserve to have an opportunity to turn their lives around. And the knowledge that is often missing, the knowledge that they have an entitlement to have a home and food in their bellies and an opportunity to live in the community and to be safe and to have their children with them. Many of the women we serve are struggling because they have not got custody of their children. And as it stands right now, finding available housing so that they can entertain that prospect is almost impossible. We're going through a major crisis in this city. We're going through a major crisis, not just with homelessness, but with poverty, with mental health deficiencies in services, and with frankly, a government that seems more intent on building a $1 million remand center to house more people in prison than they are to submit to provide resources into the community for us to be able to do the work that we so passionately want to do. But there's only so many hours in a day, and there's only so many of us, and we need all of us to band together to assist in this plea to the government. We vote people in. We need to vote people in who are going to serve us and who are going to serve the most marginalized population in the community. It touched my heart when in the beginning, when there was mention of Jesus coming homeless, and there was a message in that message, and the message is that we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility as community members. We have a responsibility within the community to serve those people who aren't able to serve themselves. And so I'm going to stop now. I think I probably gone over my time, and I apologize for that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Patty, for reminding us of that basic human right of homelessness. And the majority of the calls that I've had here around people seeking housing have been single women with children. So that definitely is a real need in our community that demands our response. So thank you again. So we're going to move on to our next presentation from Quint, and Quint is a group who very much works at the front lines of housing here in Saskatoon, and is also very familiar with some of the justice questions that Patty just raised. So on behalf of Quint, Holly Lucas. Holly, are you with us tonight? Okay, so maybe we won't hear from Quint tonight. If Holly does come in, we can just put her towards the end of our presentations, but hopefully we'll hear from Quint tonight. So we'll go on then to the Salvation Army. So we have the Executive Director, Mark Sherian, and David Clare, who's the Shelter and Trustee Coordinator, who have both joined us here tonight. So welcome, Mark and David. And the Salvation Army, of course, many of you are familiar with as one of the primary groups that providing shelter space here in Saskatoon. So I pass the baton off to you, Mark and David.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, guys. I'm going to start off talking about two of our programs here, and then Mark's going to take over and wrap up. So the two programs I'm going to talk about tonight are one, our trusteeship program, and two, our emergency after hours program. So our trust program is primarily a money management program that we are contracted with Ministry of Social Services to provide to clients. Right now, we only work out of Saskatoon, and we have a separate office in Moose Jaw, but they're not really connected to us. So we primarily focus in Saskatoon. So there's two main ways to join the trust program. Number one is referral through a Ministry of Social Services worker. So anyone who is connected with the ministry can talk to their worker about getting referred onto the trust program. Secondly, they can join our program privately. If you join through the Ministry of Social Services, there's no fee for that service. If you join privately, it's $50 per month. When you join the trust program, what you can expect is to create a plan with our trustee that manages your money and works to allocate their funds. So we look at rent payment, bill payment, transportation needs, and spending money. Those are kind of the areas that we look at. And then we come up with a plan with the client to figure out the best way to allocate those. Secondly, our emergency after hours. This is an extension of the Ministry of Social Services. So we operate during the hours that the Ministry of Social Services is closed. We provide shelter support through either emergency shelters or through our hotel partnerships. So if someone is in a housing crisis, we can contact one of our supports to kind of move them to wherever they need to be in order to ensure that they have a roof over their head. It's just for one night at a time. We don't do long-term housing that way. It's one night at a time or until the next business day. The other things we provide are emergency food hampers. We also provide emergency medical transportation to clients. And the way to access the emergency after hours program is you can either call our main line or you can drop into our Avenue C location and our staff there can figure everything else out. I'll pass the baton over to Mark now and he'll finish up.
Thanks, David. So as you know, we have a shelter. Our shelter is for men primarily. Last couple nights it's been a mix though, and I'll talk about that in a couple minutes. We have 45 beds in our shelter facility. Our shelter doesn't just offer the basics of here's a cot or a mat and you get to sleep on it. It's actually a bed for the most part. They get 3 meals with it, breakfast, lunch, and supper. And We also have case support, which helps them find housing, apply for funding, all those kind of pieces that are important to the welfare of the individuals. We also have chaplains on staff. Our chaplains do spiritual programming. To us, the wellness wheel is really important, the mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual side of it. But it isn't just Christian spirituality we're looking at. We're also looking at what the spiritual path is that individual wants to go to. So if they have need for an elder, we connect them to an elder. If they have need for a imam, we connect them to that. Whatever their needs are, we want to ensure that they're balanced in all 4 areas. And we want to make sure that they're okay. Talking about numbers a little bit, in the month of November, which realistically should be a pretty light month as far as shelters are concerned, we have, as I said, a 45-bed capacity. Our average stay per night in the month of November was 55 beds, so we're over capacity by 10. It's some pretty hard numbers that we go through. When we talk about the EAH program, we actually house 590 people in hotels in the month of November. So that's women, children, fathers, individuals that are single. And then we also have a number of people that are staying in our lobby. For example, the last 2 nights where we've had the cold weather in place, we've had 66 people stay in our shelter. That included 6 women each night because we couldn't find any other location. We work with 5 hotels in our EAH program. And when they're full, we have nowhere to send people. And that makes it really difficult. Our first choice is always try to get them in shelter. So understand that we've tried Lighthouse, we've tried YWCA before any of this has happened. And then we're at this point where we have people that are sleeping in our lobby or otherwise. Last night and the night before, we had about 74 people in total in our building. So if you think about our initial 45, we're running at about 164% occupancy compared to our standard of where we should be. It makes things difficult. It makes things much harder. We're the only warm-up location in the city from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. There's nowhere else for anyone to go. So we get pretty clogged up. Is it worse than before? It absolutely is. I don't remember in my time here at the Salvation Army ever having to step over people as I walk in each morning because they're lying in the lobby just looking for a place to rest. So it is much more difficult. When we talk about solutions, there's a few that we really need to look at. One is appropriate housing. It's not good enough just to put an individual into any kind of housing because it doesn't meet their needs. There may be individuals that could go into independent housing and be very successful. I know there are, but doesn't mean that's true for everyone. We see this cycle of homelessness where we get somebody in, we house them, a month and a half later, they're back to us because of whatever barriers that are in their life. They just don't have success in that type of housing. It could be an addiction barrier, it could be a mental health barrier, but in our community, we don't have appropriate housing for those individuals to actually move on. Second is really working with CBOs and the ministry to ensure that people are taken care of, not just in the now, not just in the immediate future, but in the long-term future to make sure there's follow-up and making sure that people are taken care of. Using things like the trust program, ensuring those pieces. So those are some of the important pieces that we need to really consider as we move forward. The last one, of course, is to ensure that we use Indigenous organizations to lead this charge. They're an important piece of the reconciliation and moving forward as we go through. I think somebody mentioned, I think it was Patty that talked about the percentage of individuals at the prison system that are Indigenous, and it's similar to the Indigenous population that we see in the homelessness sector. It's about 85%. So we really need to work with those individuals in dealing with their trauma, their intergenerational trauma, and their lack of knowledge for some of them. Just a lack of how to live independently successfully because of the long-term learning that they've had of seeing how unsuccessful it is. So it's a piece that they have to do. I'd like to end this by thanking Holy Family. I don't know who's here representing Holy Family, but your donation of gifts is much appreciated. They donated, I think, 4 or 5 shopping carts full of toys that we're using as part of our Christmas family hamper program. For those of you that are interested, this year we're up to 4,500 families that we are going to be providing Christmas meals through gift cards and presents for. So thank you to Holy Family for your support in that. Thanks, Myron, for the invite.
Hey, thank you very much, Mark, for that presentation, for walking us through all of the services that Salvation Army provides in this area, which are really just a few of what you do as a whole. And thank you also for mentioning, I can put that link in the chat and you can find that on the SHIP page, but the list of warm-up shelters. So there is a list that you can look at if you're interested in seeing that resource. Thank you as well to David for your introduction and for talking about the trusteeship. As many of you know, there was a policy change in Saskatchewan that has caused a major disruption in terms of homelessness, and trusteeship is one way to mitigate that in part. So thank you again. We're now going to hear from the bridge. Ian, are you with us this evening? Okay, yes, sorry, there you are, Ian. So Ian Moker, and please correct me if I'm not pronouncing that right, Ian, is joining us on behalf of the Bridge tonight. The Bridge is a well-known institution in a way along 20th Street who's been serving the direct needs of whoever has walked into their doors for many, many years, but their services also go beyond that. So welcome, Ian, the floor is yours. Your audio is not connected. You may be on mute.
You can hear me now?
Yes, thank you, Ian.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the diocese for holding this this opportunity to discuss as partners in this area here, just to try and help people that are homeless. And so I represent the Bridge here, and maybe just to give a little bit of a background here at the Bridge and some of the things we do there. We provide 2 meals a day, both breakfast and lunch. We also have showers. 2 showers at our place as well. We clothe people at the Bridge. We also do a number of different teachings, and also we do some training like anger management and some other things as well that we do. We do sewing classes as well, to just give some of the background that we do in the community here. Just to give a little bit of some of this is actually some of the things that have made a bit of awareness to the government here not long ago in the spring. And so I'll kind of go through some of the concerns that I brought to their attention at this time. But, you know, 85% of the people that are homeless right now are Indigenous or Métis. You know, some of the things that we observe when we're working with people that are homeless right now is that they have no advocate. They have no access really to housing, and they have a difficult time getting identification. Identification is a huge problem, especially when you're trying to deal with landlords. You know, I think somebody just talked about temporary housing is not housing, and we need to get to the point where we are trying to get people into permanent homes that are specifically for that person and going to meet their needs long term. Many of the people that we deal with don't have any references. You and I could probably pick out somebody to represent or say this person's a good person. Many of the people that we deal with don't have any references at all. And so that's a key thing. We know that there's inadequate funding right now to meet the needs of the people. That's partly why even when we have 2 meals a day, Monday through Friday, that's full from the time we start at 8 o'clock in the morning till 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And is needed, because most people would never survive if they didn't have the food that was available to them. There's not enough habitable housing. There's not enough available housing. A lot of the landlords have made it very difficult based upon their requirement and their experiences. There's not enough affordable housing. Even on the reserves, there's not enough housing there. There's inadequate housing on the reserves. There's a gap in the system for people coming out of the foster care home and the prisons to getting houses. There's, as one person was just mentioning here, that many people face discrimination. There's generational problems, especially from the residential school, the scoop. And that has actually played a significant part. When we look at generational problems that have been passed down from one generation to another, when people have been hurt or wounds in their past, and that's never been dealt with, that's been passed down from generation to generation. And we see one generation struggle and then it's kind of passed on to the next generation, but the wounding is never dealt with. I think that's a key place that the Catholic Church could begin to deal with things. It's an area that I think even the Bridge and maybe even the Salvation Army, we could all begin to work on that area to try and help people deal with the wounding and become whole people. There's lack of life skills, money management skills that have been, when a lot of these people, when they grow up in homes and their parents never knew how to handle money, then they come along and they don't know how to teach their kids how to handle money or life skills, parenting, all of these kind of skills that you and I take for granted. And it just goes from generation to generation. We almost need an arm of the government that advocates and gives direction on how to navigate the system and get identifications. Right now, to get identification, just like a health card, for instance, many of our people that come in have either lost their identifications, and it takes sometimes 2 or 3 weeks just to get the health card. And meanwhile, these people are waiting outside the whole time for a health card. And then after that, you wanting to get other things like birth certificates, etc., just in order for them to get a house. And many of our people, we know that there's a fight and flight cycle within them because of tremendous wounding. For you and I, we could advocate with social services and maybe take a no. For the people that we deal with, when they hear no, or there's more things that the social services wants, immediately the people that we're dealing with shut down, and they won't go through the whole process because they become shut down and they go, it's too much problem to get to where I need to get to. People do not know how to advocate for themselves, and sometimes they even sabotage good things happening for themselves. When we look at the funding that people are getting in the neighborhood right now for a bachelor suite, we're looking at anywhere from $600 to $800, and our people are only getting $459 a month. It's inadequate. And then we say, okay, you've got to pay the rest out of your normal living costs, which would be for things like your power, your toiletries, your basic necessities to live, your food, your clothing, and people just can't do it on the amount of money that they're getting. And so we're finding that people are just falling through the cracks here. Social services, I talked about this SIS program that the government came out with, and they thought they were doing a great thing, was a terrible thing. And I wrote the government about that because the SIS program assumed if we give everybody their money and say, here, you guys pay your landlord, you pay your power bill, you pay this, that, and the next thing. Well, we know that system doesn't work when most of these people can't even manage the money because they've never been trained how to do that or even had the opportunity to do that. And so for many people, in some cases, it was spent on addictions or other things that it should have been spent on. Consequently, landlords never got paid, And even what we're finding with landlords, the minute a landlord hears that somebody's on CIS, they don't even want to deal with them. And so it's a problem from the government standpoint that they've got to look at this. And I know they're coming back to this and saying, well, now we want to engage on this whole thing of trusteeship, which that's going to take the whole thing. But this they've known about for quite a while, that this needed to be dealt with. And as I said before, the other thing that is really a problem is just getting identifications. So that's just been our experience here. We try to help out where we can and be a supportive group to the people that we encounter here. And so, you know, again, I want to thank all the people. There's many of these people that have spoke tonight that we truly appreciate the partnership that we have with them and the resource and the help that they give us as well. So thanks everybody for what you do.
Okay, thank you, Ian, for so eloquently outlining some of the barriers that people face and for almost putting us in their shoes, for lack of a better phrase, as well as mentioning quite a few of the injustices that exist and what we can do constructively to alleviate some of those. As you mentioned, that the change to CIS, that was a storm that we saw coming back in 2019. So now, unfortunately, we're seeing the consequences of that, which is why we're seeing such a spike in homelessness today. So that's another topic really, but if you would like more information on that, please reach out to Ian, to others, to myself, or Nadia, who's been in and out of our call as well, to provide a bit more background on that. So we're going to move now to the Friendship Inn, to Sandra Carey, who is their executive director, and in the midst of a very busy season for that, another institution that has been on 20th Street for many years, feeding the hungry. So Sandra is going to take the floor now and offer a short presentation.
Hi, everyone. And yeah, thank you, Myron, for the invitation, and hello to everyone. I see a lot of familiar faces and it's good to be with you tonight. I apologize for being late, and I'm also going to be leaving early. I'm double booked tonight, and so I stepped out of a commitment to be with you. And so I just appreciate the invitation and the chance to speak with everyone. Being kind of at the end of the agenda, I don't want to repeat all of the good things that others have said already, because I certainly could, because at the Friendship Inn, we see a lot of the same people that other agencies are also working with and trying to serve and trying to help. So the Friendship Inn, just a little bit about us, has been in the community for more than 50 years. We are open 365 days a year, serving 2 meals a day, and we serve up to 1,000 meals every day. So we are primarily focused on food security in our community and work diligently to make sure we do that well. And the other thing that we have on staff is a social worker, and that social worker is there full-time Monday to Friday and doing very much the same kind of other advocacy pieces for guests that come through our doors, similar to other agencies. So that we're working with people to get them housed, to get income security, to counseling, programming, all kinds of resources that are needed by guests that come through our doors. The kind of people that come through our doors are some of the most in need in our community, for sure. Every morning we see people coming in wrapped in blankets and sleeping bags and mismatched shoes and cold and struggling. When it gets cold like this, we try and open our doors as soon as possible in the day. We open at 7 a.m. every day, and we are trying to do our very best to have a warm-up area in our buildings so that people aren't just left out in a lineup somewhere waiting for food. It's been very challenging with COVID because we've had limitations that we've had to follow, but we're doing our very best to make sure we bring people in and keep them out of the elements and out of the cold. We do offer outerwear to people. We do take in coats and toques and all that kind of stuff, and we give it away as fast as we get it. We offer as many kind of food resources as we can. We don't do food hampers like the food bank, but if we have a surplus of bread or dairy or anything like that, we do try and just hand out as much as we can. We've opened up our doors to having vaccine clinics in our building, and so that's allowed our vulnerable population to have access to vaccinations as well. we have a no questions asked policy, so we don't have people coming through our doors needing to register. And so that means we don't know the exact unique count of people that come through our doors, but we know it's hundreds and hundreds of people that are struggling from day to day. And I missed Colleen's presentation at the beginning, but I'm sure she's talked about the fact that poverty is very complex, and if we could solve it easily, we would have. And we all know that. And the three main things that we're all trying to get people stabilized with is income and housing and food. And if you don't have those three things stabilized, you can't take any kind of good steps forward. It's not so easy to go find a job if you are hungry or don't have a fixed address or don't have anywhere to have a shower or have clean clothes. And so we're all working as different agencies to try and get people as stabilized as they can at those very fringes so that they can actually move forward. But it is no easy thing. One thing we hear all the time too is that, well, there's just all kinds of agencies doing all kinds of good work. And is it a duplication? And we always tell folks that it is not a duplication. There's some people that are comfortable coming into one agency and may not into the other. And we try to catch people from all walks of life to make sure that we can provide the services that they need. So in our agency, we used to be a cafeteria style organization, and we had to change that to a dual model of both dine-in and takeaway. And let me tell you, a takeaway meal in a soup kitchen is just about the weirdest thing. We've gotten used to it now, and there are some actually good benefits to it. One of which is we actually serve people their meal rather than be in the cafeteria lineup. And I think that that's been a very dignifying thing for people and a way to relate to folks in a different way. Right now we can put about 40 people in our dining room at a time. So that means when meal times hit, they actually can only stay in our dining area for about 15 minutes, and then they have to move along so that the next people can come in the doors. It's a challenging way to serve community. I think I had the privilege of being in my position for 3 years now. So the first year was before COVID, and it was a hustling, bustling place with about 120 people in the dining room at any given time. And now having only 40 people, it's a very different environment, but we do see a lot. We see a lot of people. We see a lot of families coming back into the inn with young kids. We see seniors. We see people that are struggling with their wheelchairs out in the middle of the cold and over the streets and struggling with mobility issues. So we do our very best to try and serve everyone who comes through our doors, as all of these agencies are. And I just commend everyone who's actually doing their best to do that. And, you know, as far as the advocacy is concerned and what can we all do together, I mean, the support of any of these agencies is wonderful. I think we need to really support the Saskatoon Tribal Council as they're coming into play with their Emergency Wellness Center. And we've reached out as well to see if there's anything we can offer as far as food supports or anything that we can do. Having a 24-hour place for people to access is a big deal. And this might have been said already, sorry if I'm saying it again, but the biggest gap is between midnight and 8 a.m. And this is not an easy spot to fill. And I know Mark is the 24-hour kind of place that everyone goes to, and they're overwhelmed. So we're all trying to do our best to figure out how do we do this, and it's no easy thing. Maybe I'll just stop there because I know lots has been said. I just want to say thank you to the diocese and for all of your support thus far and your interest. And thank you for exactly doing this, being interested to ask the question and to hear more about what's happening at the front lines. I know we see this every day. There's lots of people that really, really want to help. They just don't know how. They don't know how to get to the front line and do something meaningful. So I think at any point, if anyone wants to, connect with any of us as agencies to see how to do that, we can certainly have a more fulsome conversation, because there's lots and lots that can be said. We work with lots of different scenarios every day. I'll end with just one short story, because one of our regular guests, I was walking down to the kitchen one day and he stops me and he goes, "Sandra, do you know what you do?" And I'm like, "No, well, what do I do?" And he says, "You know what? It's humanity what you do. And he's very poetic, and he kind of caught me off tension. And he said, if you didn't do what you're doing, it would be chaos. And that's true on every count: food security, income security, housing. If we didn't provide those basics, it would be absolute chaos. And it's pretty chaotic right now because we're not meeting the needs. There's probably about 150 people rough sleeping on the streets right now, and that is chaos. We shouldn't have that in our community, and we're doing everything in our power to make that not be. So I just commend you for asking these good questions and hearing more, and for partnering together to hopefully reduce those numbers, eliminate poverty the best we can, and work together. So thank you for all your support.
Thank you, Sandra, for taking the time to be with us tonight. You reminded us, we've been talking in some ways about numbers throughout the evening, but that this comes down to the dignity of the human person. So thank you for sharing that story. And these are each individuals with their own life and story and gifts to share, and that we're asked to serve. And also part of what you said is in part what ignited this conversation. So there's a tremendous amount of people out there, a high amount of goodwill, of people wanting to respond and trying to match those people with a place to respond. So thank you for giving us more information on how to do that, and support for all the agencies here that are gathered around the table tonight. So next, we're going to move to our final presentation for this part of the meeting from Comfy, Shirley Eisbester. Shirley, I'm not sure what title to give you. You've been serving the local community for so many years. You're almost like an elder in your own right here around the table. So Shirley has been with Comfy. I believe you're one of the founders or co-founders, but Shirley is going to share a little bit more with us about that wonderful organization.
Thank you. I'm actually the president of Comfy, and Comfy's an organization that works in the core area of Saskatoon on pretty well most of the challenges that we face. We're an Indigenous organization, which is comprised of Métis, First Nation, and Inuit people. When we say Indigenous, there's been lots said here tonight, and so I'm not going to go through all of it. One of the things that the main things that Comfy does is that we have a number of apartment blocks, and we work with the Ministry of Social Services, and we move Indigenous moms or dads or two-parent families in, and once they're in, their children are all returned from foster care. That portion of Comfy opened in 2008 and has been very successful. And, as soon as a spot becomes open, it's filled shortly. We do emergency receiving for the ministry. And the goal of us doing that was so that when children were brought into the care, the first faces they'd see when they came into our homes was a brown face, so that they would have a more comfortable feeling. We do visiting. We have visiting suites, so children don't have to visit parents in cubicles at the ministry. We have actual suites where there's refreshments and toys and pictures on the walls and those sort of things. We work in FASD. We have a large wellness unit that works with people with FASD and brain injuries. We definitely work in homelessness and have been doing that for approximately 30 years. And we see a large amount of homeless in the core area. And through COVID, we served over 90,000 lunches, and we delivered over 4,500 hampers in our community. We're an Indigenous organization, but we're status blind. Anyone that is in need, our goal is to serve our community no matter what. We are never going to eliminate homelessness, and we are never going to eliminate poverty. I think the best that we can do is work towards a better quality of life for people. In our area, you know, we're 85% are Indigenous people that are homeless. And I really think that, you know, everyone says we need houses, we need appropriate housing and everything. To be able to attain that, we need dollars to be able to purchase those housing units. You know, I've wanted to build a village of tiny houses so that homeless would have a little home that's their own. And that could be in a village, because, you know, it's like when we opened our Elders Lodge here last week, my goal is that it will become a Métis community. And it's already starting to be that. And we have homeless elders. We're the first to move in to our building. We need to be able to have the opportunity to serve our people. And, you know, I sometimes look around. I know there's so many people that want to help, but we need to help ourselves. And to do that, we need to be the leaders in achieving that, so that when our children and our grandchildren grow, they see that the leaders in the community are just the same color as them. And they know they have the opportunity to be able to move forward and become those future leaders. For myself, there was never an Indigenous leader in anything I was at, even when I started working and, you know, in school. Now the kids at least have the opportunity. They're seeing that there's really qualified Indigenous teachers and there's mentors, and so our children are going to be able to grow in a different environment and learn that they can be those leaders. They can be the premier. They can be a prime minister. Those are things that we want our children to learn. And so for me, when I look at what we need, I mean, there's so much addiction in our community. There's so many mental health issues that go along with that. And there are a lot of places that we're not able to house certain people. You know, and it's not because people don't want to, it's because addictions has changed their personalities, and they've become violent and everything else. And you can't have your staff being attacked. You know, your role in any organization is to protect your staff and also the people that come there. So, you know, the Salvation Army does everything possible to have people housed. Yet we have how many people in hotel rooms? But there's also hotel rooms that absolutely will not take any of our people. And, you know, it sounds harsh in saying that, but unless you've actually worked the day to day, you don't have an understanding of that. So we need to find ways so that people will have a place to stay. And I mean, the tribal council is opening up, I think is going to be like sometimes almost a savior in our community, because, you know, Chief Mark is saying that no one's going to be turned away. And so, you know, hopefully the resources are there so that in, you know, at 3 a.m, if we find someone that's homeless, they're going to be able to we'll be able to take them there. They'll have a place to stay. Comfy has a mobile community resource center. And so that, you know, we've taken it out on the street, but we're waiting for the government to be able to make that announcement, because it's funded federally. So we're waiting to be able to make that announcement, but we already have it out in the street. We also have a warm-up trailer. So, you know, I'll end on one story. Last year when we were open through the Christmas season, I pulled up to the office and And the guy that was staffing the trailer said, oh, I think there's a guy here not doing well. We just called an ambulance. And when the ambulance got there, both of his feet were just frozen solid and he had a broken arm. And if he'd have been left outside, he would not have survived. And so knowing where the trailers are, or the warm-up places are, is going to save our community. And I know we've been really busy since it's been cold, because we're open all day, and serve hot chocolate and snacks to people that are in there. So anyhow, I've probably gone over my time, but I'm really glad, and it was good to hear from everyone. And there's so many organizations in the core area that do so much work and support each other. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you, Shirley, for walking us through some of the efforts that Comfy has been involved with for many, many years, and for pointing us again at that direct intersection, rather, of racism and poverty, where we really need to look at, as someone said earlier, healing as part of the recipe when we're addressing poverty in our community. So thank you again for that presentation. So we're going to take a 2-minute health break at this time, and this is to buy me some time to put us in intentional small groups. You're going to be placed in small groups with some of our experts here around the table for those who are joining us from the parishes. And the questions will all appear in the chat, so you don't have to worry about memorizing these, but I will say them before we go into a brief break here tonight, just so you have them to think about. So the first question that you're going to be considering is, what is your parish doing to care for the poor and vulnerable? The second question is, what would you like to see your parish do based on the needs that were just shared by agencies? And thirdly, what supports are needed all around for both agencies and churches to collaborate? So we'll come back at 7:51. And at that time, you'll find yourself placed in a small group, and we'll take until about 8:05 to be in those groups. So please enjoy this short break, and we'll see you shortly.